everybody. Welcome to the community garden here at Duke Farms. I have you guys here on Facebook Live. I have some people here in person. Welcome. Thank you for coming out. I love teaching to actual humans. I missed that a lot this year. My name is Melissa Almendinger. I'm the coordinator here at the Duke Farms Community Garden. It's a lovely, beautiful, amazing fall day. I can't believe how beautiful it is. For those of you that are new to our Garden Chats program, we've been doing these this year sort of as a substitute for some of the workshops that we normally offer here in the community garden. But hopefully we'll continue doing these next year, even though hopefully we'll have some more in-person programs as well. So this is our community garden. It's 5 acres. We are actually starting our renewal process for any existing gardeners. And then we'll be opening plots to the public in January. So if anybody's interested in learning about getting a plot here at Duke Farms, definitely reach out to me and I can give you some more of that information. We're going to be talking about garlic today, but before I do that, for any of you who tuned into our last Garden Chats program on cover cropping, I wanted to point out the bed that we cover cropped, which is right behind me. It is looking spectacular. For those of you that want to watch that video and learn more about cover cropping, you can just go through Duke Farms' Facebook page under videos and find that. I think that was, we decided just about 3 weeks ago. The cover crop that we used in that bed was an oats and field pea mixture from Johnny's Seeds. It does need to be planted a couple weeks before the first frost. It's obviously come in really nice, and that will live probably until January, February, depending on how cold it is. By the time I come back in April to start to get that bed planted, it will be dead straw, basically, and then I'll just plant right into it. So it's a really easy way to get some cover crop on your garden. This time of year, the garden is sort of dying, and, you know, we're cutting back things. We're getting ready for that long winter sleep. It's really, I wouldn't say my favorite time of year, but it's really satisfying to really close out your season, start to think about your successes, any things that you want to do differently for next year. And garlic is one of the very last things that I plant in the garden, so it has that nice fall feel to it. Garlic, we are here in New Jersey, central New Jersey, in zone 6B, and garlic should be planted right about this time in the fall. Depending on who you ask, some people plant it in mid-September, some people plant it in January. So there's a wide range of what's acceptable and what works. So definitely you can play around with it on your own. I prefer sort of this first week in October as a good planting date. I like to get it in before the first frost. Of course, this year, I don't know when our first frost is going to be. It feels like never. It's usually around October 15th. It will not be October 15th this year. That's tomorrow. The closest we're going to get this Saturday, it's going to be around 37. But then it gets warm again, so it's kind of an oddball year. Before you plant garlic, just a little bit of background. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but there's a couple kinds of garlic you can plant. You can choose soft-neck garlic. You can choose hard-neck garlic. The hard-neck garlic are the ones that develop a flower stalk, which we call a garlic scape. And those have been getting more and more. You guys can come in. You can come closer. You're comfortable. They've been getting more and more prevalent at farmers markets as specialty items. The garlic scape you cut off right around mid to late June. It has a lovely mild garlic flavor. A lot of people like to make pesto with the garlic scapes. The soft neck garlic does not form a scape. So depending on which you choose, if you want the scape, you have to purchase a hard neck. The soft neck technically holds a little bit longer in your basement or wherever it is that you're curing and holding your garlic throughout the winter, but hardneck garlic will last a good long time, like up to 8 months. So it's really not a problem, especially because you have that scape harvest. So it seems to be in my household, as soon as the actual garlic is sort of running out, then it's almost time to harvest those scapes. So I have that period of time, and then I'm back to garlic again. So it's really easy. It's one of those crops that you can actually be like sustain your family on without ever having to purchase garlic. It's really hard to do that to grow enough, but garlic is one of those crops you can do that with. So you want to choose, like I said, hard neck or soft neck. You definitely don't want to just go to the supermarket and buy garlic because the garlic in supermarket has been sprayed. It's been sprayed with anti-fungicides. It's been sprayed with chemicals so that it doesn't sprout which of course we want it to sprout when it's in the ground. So we don't want to buy stuff in the supermarket. Also, you don't know if there's any disease or so forth from supermarket garlic. And supermarket garlic is often, more times than not, the soft neck variety. So when I talk about planting garlic, you're actually using a garlic bulb. So for those of you that didn't realize that and thought there was like a magical seed somewhere, you're actually using a bulb. Using the clove is the seed. So one garlic clove will grow into one garlic bulb. Okay? You can save it year after year. So this is a garlic that we harvested back in July, and we dried it and saved it, and now we're ready to plant it again. So if you get in that habit, what you want to do is just plan to plant a little bit extra. That way you have a little bit extra or you have some left over in the fall to plant. Each garlic head, a hard neck produces somewhere between like 6 to 8 cloves per head. And then the soft neck is a little bit more. So you can start to do a little bit of garlic mathematics, if you like, to see how much you actually need to save. You can also order garlic online. Any of the organic seed companies will sell it. You need to make sure you order in a timely fashion so you get it delivered on time. Or you can go to like an organic farm and purchase it there. So we're here in Hillsborough. I'll do a plug for my favorite farm, which is Lima Family Farm, which is also in Hillsborough down the road from here. They usually have hardneck garlic for sale. It's an organic farm. You can buy it from there, no problem. And that's probably where this head came from, because I often go there. It's pretty affordable. You can go to some of the local nurseries as well. To choose your spot that you want to put your garlic in, it should be as part of a crop rotation. So garlic is pretty hardy. It's not real susceptible to disease, but there are some funguses that can grow in the soil, and there are some wireworms and some other things. So year after year, you're planting the same crop in the same spot. Those pests and disease are going to build up. So definitely rotate it around to different spots in your garlic. We're planting it here where our tomatoes have been. We've gone ahead and removed the tomatoes from this spot, and now it's ready for planting. We already applied some compost. So it's a good habit to get into as gardens to amend your garden in the fall. About 1 to 2 inches of some kind of organic compost, leaf mulch, something like that, that you can add to your garden each year. 6 to 8 inches is not necessary and can actually be detrimental. It's not soil. You need that mineral soil for the plants to be in. Not just compost, but you do, adding the compost will give you a nice boost of microorganisms and organic matter and mineral content and so forth. So we've already added about an inch or two of compost. You can see how lovely and dark the surface is. I'm going to demonstrate to you. I do like to aerate my soil. I talked about this in the cover crop class. It's really important to make sure that your garden soil is not compact. When you have raised beds like this, it's easy to not step in them, so you're not adding to that compaction. If you garden flat to the ground, be careful that you're not stepping in your beds. You want to always have a walking space and a growing space. Now, I'm not one to do any soil inversion or tilling or anything like that. I think that here at Duke Farms, we treat our garden soil as we would treat our forest soil, which is basically hands-off. Adding stuff in, adding organic material, but not doing a lot of moving of soil and inversion of soil. What I do like to do in the fall is do a little bit of aerating, and I just want to kind of demonstrate to you what that looks like. I like to use a pitchfork, though you can use a regular shovel. You can use a broad fork if you have one. They're all about a foot length, right? So it's about a foot down that you like to go. And really all I like to do is kind of just put my fork down in there. You can see mine is going nice and easily, and just kind of break open the soil a little bit. Make sure that there's no hard spots. Make sure that there's no compaction. You'll know if there's compaction. I think you guys, we had some compaction in your soil last year, right? We went to test it, and we're stepping on the pitchfork and realizing, oh my gosh, I can't get in here. That's going to impact your roots, your tomato plants and your garlic plants and whatever it is. They're going to send down roots, and you want to have space for them. Doing it at this time of year is nice because the freeze is coming. And we all know when water gets into soil and then it freezes, it actually expands. So it's going to break apart any of that compaction, and it's going to allow sort of microorganisms. It's going to allow the compost to filter down in there. I haven't mixed in the compost. I usually just put it right on top and rake it out. So really, you're not doing any serious digging. And once you do this, year after year, it really is just this easy. I just kind of go through and give it a little, I mean, you know, the whole year it's been raining, there's been wind and erosion and things like that. I'm sure I've stepped in here accidentally at some point or another. So just going through and doing this quick bit of aeration. If you can't do it in the fall, because maybe you have some crops growing in there, you can go ahead and do it in the spring. But if you'll notice, I'm not actually flipping my soil over. I'm going to do this section right here, and then I'm going to be done, because I'm not going to plant this whole bed with garlic. I'm just going to plant the ends. Okay, so now I'm pretty much ready to go. I've got my compost, got my soil aerated, I'm ready to plant. Garlic can get a little bit tall, so I want to think about where I plant it. It's going to be in my garden all the way until approximately July 4th in our zone. So make sure you're not planting it where right behind it you want to plant radishes or something really tiny, because it might block it, but it's not going to hurt anything in this corner. Even if I planted this whole bed, it would be fine. What you want to do is break apart the head, which depending on how tight it is, can sometimes be a bit of a challenge. Welcome back. Technical difficulties. Hopefully you're still here with us. Who knows? This will be recorded regardless. Okay, so I've gone ahead and broken apart my garlic cloves. Here they are right here. I've gotten 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 from this particular head of garlic. And these are huge. So if you have saved your garlic from the years before, pick the biggest cloves to plant. That'll give you the biggest heads. So you can, over time, actually increase the size of your garlic. There's some debate over the spacing of garlic. Some people, like if you go by square foot gardening, it's going to tell you to plant like every 4 inches, 9 per square feet. I feel like that's a little bit close. Some other books say up to 8 or 9 inches apart per clove. So I tend to go somewhere in the middle. Kathy and I were just talking about this. We like to go about 6 inches. And actually she found a really clever hack, and I love this. So you're going to use your hand as your spacing. So this makes it really easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the palm of my hand against the side of the garden, and wherever my fingertips land, that's where my first clove is going to be. So I'm just going to lay it here, and then I'm going to kind of go across the bed like this. And I measured my hand, and it's about 6 inches. And so I love this because this makes life, I like things that make things, you know, easier. And I'm going to land about there. So if you want to show what that looks like. So I've got 5. How wide is this? Let's see. 45 inches of the inside of the bed. It's 45 inches. Squeeze them in more, right? So depending on their space, the closeness of spacing is going to have be directly related to your soil fertility. So if you feel like you have the greatest soil in the world and you can space them in closer, that's great. You know, so there's no hard rules. I am going to put a little bit of balanced fertilizer in the hole, probably about a 1/4 cup or like a handful, a couple tablespoons, whatever. I don't really measure it. I do like balanced fertilizer for garlic. I don't like to use something that's real high in nitrogen. What you're doing right now with the garlic is you're trying to grow roots. And nitrogen really promotes green tops. We don't want a lot of green tops this time of year, even though if they grow, it's fine. But what we want is really strong, nice roots. That's going to make a nice garlic clove in the spring. So I'm going to do a balanced fertilizer. What was the other part of your trick, Kathy? As deep as your
thumb.
As deep as
your thumb.
Okay. So again, anywhere from 3 to 4 inches. My thumb is probably about 3 inches, maybe only 2. I don't know. I'm going to kind of go in here. I'm gonna use these fingers, actually. I like that a little. That feels more comfortable. I'm gonna take about a handful of fertilizer, maybe 2 to 3 tablespoons. I don't think that's quite a 1/4 of a cup. I'm gonna put it right in the hole. So again, it's right where, as soon as the roots come out, they have access to that. Direction of planting matters with garlic. The bottom, kind of rough spot, that's the root end. The top pointy side, that's the stem end. Don't plant your garlic upside down. Plant it root side down, okay? If you really like a very neat and tidy garden, you can see that the garlic clove has a flat belly, or maybe that's the flat back and a rounded belly, however you call it. It doesn't really matter. If you line them up in the same direction, they're going to line up like soldiers and look very nice and neat, because when the garlic comes out, it's kind of flat. It comes out like a grass and has sort of an arching appearance to it. So if you have some that are arching this way and some that are arching this way, get a little bit, you know, not too neat looking. It does not matter for the sake of your clothes, but if you like a neat garden. So I'm going to try to line up all of my curved sides towards the edge of the bed. And I'm going to really kind of press them down in there. Before I cover them, I'm actually going to plant the whole row. So I'm going to dig in again with my fingers, put my handful, have my round in there. I'm going to come over here and do the rest of these. And if you get into a rhythm, you could bang out a whole lot of garlic in a very small amount of time. Some people will lay out their entire bed before they plant anything to make sure that it's all even and spaced out lovely. That's great if you want to do that. Once it's in there, I'm going to probably get my next row set up. So I'm going to do the same hand trick. I'm going to go from the garlic clove and I'm going to go this way now.
Melissa,
so I know.
Could you just hold up the fertilizer bag?
Yep. We have no Spoma brand of fertilizer. They have all different kinds of tones: biotone, garden tone, plant tone. This one is biotone. It does have, what does it have in here that I like? It's balanced. I think it has some mycorrhizae. I'm not exactly sure. I remember reading it at some point. But the balanced, for those of you that don't know what that means, it means the NPK ratios are about the same. So nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, NPK. So this one is 433, so they're about the same. If you had like a 10-2-2, that would be really high in nitrogen, something like soybean meal or blood meal. And that would be great for your greens and things that really need a lot of nitrogen. So this one is a little bit more, and this works on everything. You could use this really just kind of a general purpose. So anyway, I'm going to go this way. I'm going to lay out my next set of garlic bulbs, and that's how I would do that. So I would you end up with this grid pattern. So let me finish this. I'm going to get two more. I'm going to get these in the ground, and then I'm going to show you what I do with them. You can actually start to eyeball it at this point, and see where they're going to land. So I'm going to do the same thing with these next 5 garlic. I'm going to make sure that the rounded belly or back is facing the edge of the wooden bed still. Kathy, are there any other questions on Facebook right now? Did people rejoin?
Yeah, a lot of people rejoined.
Okay.
Somebody asked about the name of the farm where you got the seed garlic, where you like to get the seed garlic.
Sure.
Lima Farms.
That farm is called Lima, Lima, Family Farm. Again, I have no association with them. I just think they're a great farm. And they often sell garlic heads, hard-neck garlic heads, which are organic. So it's just easy rather than ordering it. It's not like at the last minute you're like, oh, I don't have enough, I need another head. You can run down the road and grab that. Anything else?
Somebody asked how much fertilizer per hole.
That's a great question, and I'm not measuring. I'm putting like a handful.
A small handful.
Bulbs. This says bulbs 1 teaspoon. Flower beds is 4 pounds. I don't know. I really, it's a handful. It's probably about 2 tablespoons if I were to measure it. I said a quarter cup before, which is 4 tablespoons. I don't think it's quite that much. It's organic though, so you don't have to worry too much. It's not going to burn your plants. Like if you were using a Miracle Grow, which is much higher in nutritional content, that could burn your plants. So you have to be a little bit more careful. What I wouldn't do is in the fall, lay a general fertilizer over all my soil and sort of mix it in, because a lot of it is just going to wash out over the winter, and then you're just kind of wasting your money. The general rule is like you do your amending in the fall, your compost and your leaves, and then you do your fertilizing in the spring, either in the hole like I just did, Or if you were going to do, say, carrot seeds, you would drag your row for carrot seeds, do a little bit of fertilizer right in that row, and plant your seeds right in there. You basically want the roots to come right in contact with the fertilizer when they start to grow. And fertilizer is not required also. If you've been gardening fine without use of fertilizer, you don't feel like you have to use it. I sometimes will take a look at my plants and read them. If they're a little bit yellowing or they're stunted in growth, that might tell me they need a little bit more nutrition. I'll give them a boost of fertilizer, but it's not absolutely required. So what do I do now? I've got my garlic planted. I'm going to cover it. I'm not even really going to water it. I mean, I guess you could. I water it a little bit in the fall. You know what I should do is mark where I planted them. If you did the whole bed, you don't need to necessarily mark it. But since I only did 2 rows, I may come back here and do a couple more later. So I want to mark where I left off. A little bit of water in the fall. I don't really go too crazy. I mean, if it's really dry, I might water them. I'll probably water them later today. And then maybe every few days. And once it starts frosting, I really don't water them at all. So I barely water them, I guess is the answer. I do recommend using a mulch. My favorite mulch in the fall is leaves, of course, because they are free. So I collected this off the side of the road this morning. I'm famous for that. People call me the crazy leaf lady, probably. All right. So you can do this right now, or you can do it later. You can really pile on the mulch for garlic, because what you want to do is you want to prevent it from frost heaving. So as your soil freezes, it kind of squeezes together and can squeeze plants out. That's what frost heave is. You don't want your bulbs squeezing out of the ground. So a nice heavy layer, 3 to 6 inches even, of leaves, straw, whatever you have on hand. Lay down some, stakes on top so it doesn't all blow away, and leave it there. You don't have to worry about the little green. If the garlic, what it starts to do is it'll start to put down roots. It may also start to put out its little leaves. You don't have to worry about that in the fall. Like, you don't have to make room for it or whatever. They'll be fine under there. They will regrow in the spring. So I lay this down. Once the frost comes, I really just literally put it out of my mind. I don't think any more about it. In the spring, you're going to revisit this patch nice and early in March, okay? If it's a particularly wet spring especially. I want to remove 75% of that mulch, because what you want to do is allow your soil to air out and dry out. These bulbs in the ground are still at risk for rotting, even though you've planted them in the fall and they have some roots. If it's a very cold and wet spring, they could rot in the ground. So, and having too much mulch on there is going to hold that cold moisture in there. So I want to remove almost all of it, so that you just have a thin layer. Allow that soil to breathe. You're going to start seeing those green shoots come out of the ground. Just make sure none of them are like getting held down by mulch. So once they start coming up and your soil starts drying out, at that point you can actually add some of that mulch back in and sort of protect those bulbs a little bit now from drying out too much. So it's a little bit of a game. I really don't do much to my garlic in the way of maintenance. I give it a little bit of water here and there, but it's already established. Its roots are already established, so I don't worry about, like, I'll water maybe once a week if we haven't had rain, but I don't overwater garlic. I will, in my mind I do this, but I actually don't often remember to do it. But using a foliar feed on all of your garden is a good habit to get into, and that includes garlic. So things like fish emulsion or liquid kelp, liquid seaweed, you can actually mix them right into your watering can. The recipe is right. It's really just like a tablespoon per gallon or something. Mix them right into your watering can, or you can get a sprayer to make it even easier. I have a 1.5 gallon sprayer, like the kind that you would use for herbicide, really. But I bought it empty. I fill it with water and fertilizer, and then I go around and spray everything once every 1 to 2 weeks. Okay, so maybe every other Saturday or something like that. You want to basically spray it on until the leaves are dripping. You're not necessarily watering the soil with it, you're watering the leaves. And what that does is it gets kind of like a probiotic for your plant. It gives it a little boost of nutrition right on the leaves. It can absorb some of that, gives it a little insects and things like that. And it's a good habit to get into. So your garlic can be part of that routine. Like I said, once every 1 1 to 2 weeks of spraying. If you miss a week, it's fine. It's not a hard science. Once it gets to probably the middle of June, early June, you'll start to see if you planted hardneck. The scape is a long, skinny flower stalk, basically comes up the center of the garlic. It'll start to curl. Once it starts to curl, or makes like a full 360 really, and different varieties. This variety is called music garlic, but there's hundreds of varieties. Once it starts to curl, you cut it basically as low as you can, right down to the bottom of the scape. Take that inside. Again, it's a lovely flavor. You can do all sorts of fun things. Maybe we'll do a program on that. 2 to 3 weeks after the scape is harvested, that's when your garlic is going to be ready. The plant itself, the green part of the plant above ground, will be about 2/3 dead, 2/3 browned. So it's not a disease, it's not a problem. It just means that your garlic is pretty much ripe. If you let it go too long in the ground, what happens is it gets overripe and the actual bulb will start to burst apart, which is fine. You can still eat it, but you can't preserve it then because it won't last as long in your basement or wherever you're saving it. So you gotta kind of pay attention to that critical timing, about 2 to 3 weeks after the scapes have been harvested and about 2/3 dead, usually around the 4th of July, depending on how much rain we've gotten and how hot it's been. Wait till it's been dry for a few days. The drier the clove is when you harvest, again, the better preserving that you're gonna have. So you want to not just yank them out, use a pitchfork or something to loosen the soil, pull them out. I usually leave them resting right on top of the soil for about 24 hours. Let them dry out, get all that dirt dried off, and then I just kind of brush them off. You don't wash them. Bring them into some place to cure. So whether it's your garage, some people do it in their basement, a barn, someplace out of direct sunlight that's relatively warmish. Usually put a fan on them or have an open window for some ventilation. And they take a couple of weeks to cure. Curing just means totally drying. All of the moisture is going to come out. So you'll notice that the stem that had been green and the roots that had been on there are totally dry. You can see how paper dry that was, right? It turns all white, completely dry. There's no moisture left in that stem. You can trim them up, store them, again, out of direct sunlight. Some people will store them right in their shed, which means over the winter they will freeze, and they've had good success with that. So play around with your space. I did try to store them in my pantry one year in a bag, and they rotted. So that was too much, they were all kind of in a bag. Too much moisture was held in there, and humidity just from the air. And so I don't recommend doing that. But that's pretty much it. So it's a very easy crop. One of my favorite for even new gardeners to plant. It kind of forces you to get outside and do that garden work in the fall, get your beds all ready and tidied up, which of course is a better time of year than to do it in the spring. And once it's in here, I'll finish planting as much of this garlic that I have, throw on this leaf mulch, and then just kind of call it a day. Any head?
So again, hold up the starter fertilizer bag.
Starter fertilizer.
Yep, so it is Epsoma Organic Biotone Starter Fertilizer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Somebody asked that their bulbs that they've harvested this year in July are starting to go bad. Why would that happen?
You're probably storing them. Maybe they didn't cure well enough. Did you dry them for the full amount of time? If you cut them and store them when they have any moisture still in them, then they're going to be more prone to rotting. Or if you're storing them like I described in your pantry, where it's just too much humidity or too much light, or if they had, like if there was like a fungal issue in your garlic from the soil, you didn't realize it, that could multiply inside the clove. That's happened to me before, where I cure them, I do everything right, and I open them up, and half of the head is fungusy and rotten. So what I would do is, if you're afraid they're going bad, you can just freeze them. Just go ahead, break them all up into cloves, separate out the bad ones and get rid of them, and then you can either chop and freeze the ones that you have, or you can just freeze them whole. They'll be fine. You can peel them first, not peel them first, whatever works for you, but that way you don't risk losing the whole batch of them. What I would not do is preserve them in oil. You know how you buy like chopped garlic and oil at the supermarket? You have to be really careful because things preserved in oil are a high risk for E. coli. So don't do that yourself unless you are schooled and trained and you know exactly how to do that. They always have to be stored in the fridge unless you can them or preserve them. But even in the fridge, I think they have a short sort of life of use. So just be careful. So I would just probably freeze them.
Okay, another question, do you plant them all together or spread out?
As far as like multiple...
I'm guessing that means multiple beds, multiple locations.
I usually put all of my garlic in one spot. There is some theory, some people like to mix up their plants. So a little bit of garlic here, a little bit of garlic there, a little bit of garlic there, just in case there's some bug or fungal issue in this bed. That's especially helpful for things like, tomatoes or something. You may get really good success out of one bed and not out of another. I tend to put all my garlic in one bed, but you really could spread it out. And garlic is one of those sort of famous companion plants. Anything in the allium family, it does really well with brassica, something to do with the sulfur and the fungus associated. Do you ever have broccoli? You get like that fungus on the plant. So you could definitely spread them out and plant them. They're good deer repellent, bunny repellent. Maybe line your plot with them or your fence with them. But just be aware, year after year, you shouldn't be planting them in the same spot. So if you're going to spread them out into 3 or 4 beds, pick another 3 or 4 beds next year. If you do 2 years in a row, it shouldn't be a problem. But definitely after the second year in the same spot, I would move them to a new spot. And they are in the allium family. So they're in the same family as onions, leeks, scallions. Is that it? Yeah, I think so. So don't, that they all should be rotated sort of in the same family. So if you planted garlic, don't plant leeks there the next year. Same insects can attack it.
All right, so we sow in fall and harvest in spring.
You harvest basically in July 4th. So it's a summer crop. So it really takes up a good large chunk of your garden. Once you harvest in July, usually what I do is I throw a little bit of buckwheat cover crop for the month. And then in early August, I start to plant my fall crops. Give it a little bit of a break. This year at my home garden, I threw in the buckwheat, took it out first week in August, and did some cabbages and rutabagas and things in the brassica family. And man, they are doing amazing. So I'm going to definitely repeat that. I don't know if it was just a stroke of luck or if there was some science behind it, but the cabbages are so beautiful and just everything was very lush given that rotation. So I'll definitely do that again.
Okay, one final question. Can I plant bulbs if they are a bit yellow? Can I plant bulbs where part of the papery skin has come out?
Okay, that's a good question. So you don't want to remove the papery skin because that will protect the bulb. So you don't peel it as if you're gonna cook it. But I would say if the skin has fallen off, go ahead and plant it anyway. Like I don't think it's a huge deal. I just wouldn't do it on purpose. And if they're a little bit dried and yellow, I think that's fine to plant. Because they're gonna get a seed is usually dry. So if you put it in the ground, it'll still. I wouldn't. Maybe there's a point at which it's too dry. If it's like a little hard, rock of garlic clove, maybe at that point I would just toss it out. But if it's a little bit dried or yellow, I think it's fine to plant.
Melissa, what about, and are there any crops that we shouldn't plant garlic, after we've done it? Like, I know I wouldn't do it where we had edamame.
Okay.
That's high in nitrogen. What other plants would you suggest avoiding?
Okay, so the question is there anything to avoid as far as a rotation is concerned, before, after, or with? And what are you chiming in? Peas?
You can't plant peas and garlic near each other.
How come? For the garlic?
Peas.
Okay, have you tried it?
No, but I read that.
I always read that the alliums and the legumes are not friends. So garlic and beans, you're saying garlic and peas. I've never actually experimented with it. This is information that I've just read in various books. You're confirming it. So maybe just avoid that. So your suggestion that you shouldn't plant, that's at the same time though.
But you don't look at the same time.
That's what I mean. So that's what that means when it says don't plant them together. I don't know if it matters if it's before or after.
Plant peas while the garlics are in the ground so you wouldn't have it near it. That's why I avoid it.
Right, but if you had, say, you half a bed of garlic, or garlic as a perimeter, could you do beans in the middle? The answer, I guess, is I'm not exactly sure. I've always read they're not good friends, to not plant them together. As far as a rotation, yeah, I wouldn't plant garlic right after a legume because it does infuse a lot of nitrogen into the soil. I don't think it would hurt it, though, to be honest. I mean, I don't think it's that much nitrogen that it's...
Soy is such a...
Yeah.
Enriches the soil with
What I would say is, if you've planted a legume, following that should be some kind of green crop, right? Lettuce, spinach, broccoli even, because those are nitrogen hungry, so you might as well use that, scavenge that extra nitrogen, which is the buckwheat is a legume, and I'm wondering if that's why my brassicas are doing so well right now, because they had that extra bit of nitrogen in the soil. I mean, no one really knows. There's all kinds of intricacies in your soil that we don't know about, but that's what makes it fun to play around. So other than that, the legume association, I don't think there's anything that's like a bad friend of garlic. Any other questions on Facebook Live?
No.
Any other questions here? Cool. Okay, I hope everybody goes home and plants some garlic. It was pretty rainy here Sunday and Monday, so I did want to wait for the soil to dry out, but it feels like it's nice and drained. I wouldn't do it if it was sopping wet. Now is a good time, anytime. Like I said, some people do it right up until January. And definitely we'll kind of check back with you guys in the spring. Maybe we'll have another Facebook Live when the garlic is up and growing and we're ready to cut the scapes, so you can see what that looks like. And thank you for those of you who are here in person, for those of you that are streaming live. This will be recorded and available for your future viewing pleasure. So thanks again, you guys. Enjoy your day.